welcome back to 237, back with another review. And this is kind of a random review because this is not a extreme horror film like the ones I've been doing lately. It's actually a film that's been on my radar for quite some time. I've only known the name, seen the cover, and just heard that it was this very well done avant-garde surrealist horror film. Which stuff like that I really tend to get into. Uh, I haven't seen any other films from this director, but I know of them. Like I definitely know of the movie El Topo, which isn't a horror film, but it's one that I've been meaning to check out. And of course, that is Alejandro Jodorowsky. Excuse me. And it's his 1989 film Santa Sangre. And this is the 2-disc special edition Blu-ray put out by Severin, which is a fantastic release. I mean, disc 2 has over 8 hours of stuff on it that I haven't checked out yet, but so yeah, I haven't seen any other films by a Jodorowsky, but I have heard that he is kind of an auteur of film. He has a very distinct style. It is very stylish, very artistic. And a lot of times when I hear surreal horror, I usually think of something like Eraserhead or the Japanese film House. When I hear avant-garde, I think of something like Begotten or what I've heard so far of Subconscious Cruelty. But put them together, avant-garde and surrealism, I was expecting a super crazy, trippy, mind fuck of a film. And to its credit, it does get trippy, but not nearly to the lengths that I thought it was going to go. But this is still a marvelous, marvelous film. I thought it was fantastic. It does deserve all the praise and accolades that it's had. Apparently, this is one of Empire's top 500 movies. I mean, I had never heard of it till fairly, well, I guess the last few years, but uh, it is a co-production between Mexico and Italy. So you have Jodorowsky as the writer, and it was written with Robert Leone and Claudio Argento, and produced by Claudio Argento, who produced most, if not all, of Dario Argento's films. It's Argento's brother. I think wrote a number of films that Argento has directed. So the three of these guys together is, I imagine it was going to be very well done. And it does have some Argento flavor to it, especially with the way some of the kill scenes are shot, especially with the lighting and the color palette of those scenes. Actually stars the director's sons, Axel and Aiden, as our lead Phoenix, which I'm watching it, I'm thinking they did a wonderful job at the casting with young Phoenix and older Phoenix. Coming to find out they're actually brothers. Blanca Guerra, Guy Stockwell, Thelma T.U., if I pronounced that correctly, Danielle or Daniel Nianuzzi on cinematography, and Simon Boswell on music. The music was very well done as well. The tone of the film is very melancholic, kind of depressing tone, with just the look of the film, how it's shot, which it didn't look or feel like an Italian or Spanish film of the 80s. It did look a little older. It kind of reminded me a lot of like a Sergio Leone film in the way a lot of the cinematography. Mixed with, okay, there was some Argento in there. There was some David Lynch in there for sure. Where was I seeing other names people have compared it to? But overall, the story, you're probably going to see it compared a lot to Psycho, and I can definitely see why. I'll try to get into that as much as possible before spoilers. It is a little longer. It does sit at 123 minutes. But this was made for $787,000. Micro budget, and it looks phenomenal. It looks fantastic. it it kind of tells two stories of the same character, but for two different time frames. We open up with this sort of Jesus-looking guy named Phoenix, played by Axel Jodorowsky. You know, he's perched up in a tree. He eats raw fish off a plate in this asylum, I guess, or a mental hospital. And then we jump back to when he was a boy. The themes of the film is basically childhood trauma, how we handle it, and how it can carry over and affect us in our adult life. And, you know, he was a child, a magician. His father, Orgo, ran the circus. He was a knife thrower. His mother was the acrobat, I think. A trapeze artist, excuse me. And he goes through a series of very traumatic events. I mean, there were some parts that, it's not that they were gruesome or really graphic, but just the way they were presented, I was just kind of like, what? That poor fucking kid. I should probably get into some of the backstory, because Robert Leone worked at a mental hospital at one point, so he's kind of taken some of his past experiences. Jodorowsky actually met a chance meeting one time with probably the most notorious a Mexican serial killer. The first one to certainly get like widespread media attention. Gregorio Cardenas Hernandez, if I pronounced that correctly. And sorry I'm stuttering so much. This is very loosely based on his life or his story. And then some aspects of what Claudio Argento wanted to bring to it, which I think, what exactly did Argento... Oh, he just kind of added to what Leone brought to it. And apparently, I think at this time, Jodorowsky had stopped directing films. He was supposed to direct an adaptation of Dune. Then there's the children's book Tusk, not the Kevin Smith film. And then he was just a comic writer up until he did this. So, that's the backstory. Now, so yeah, it's not that there's particularly gruesome, shocking, or extreme moments that happened in his childhood, but, what I was going to say is, Leone wanted to make a movie where this guy is a serial killer, but you feel bad for him. Every time he kills, you feel bad for him. You even feel worse for him than you do the victim. And I do think they captured that to a certain extent. I do think they were successful with that. But like some of the traumatic events, I really don't want to give this movie too much away, because it is one of those movies that if you go into it completely blind, that's the best way to go into it. So before I even talk about the plot, even though I should, because the main real trippy, surreal part of the main plot line of the second half is he meets, no, you know what? Just go check it out. It is surreal. It's not quite to the extent of House or Eraserhead, but it is very well shot, very well done, and it really does show a child going through these traumatic events. He becomes this serial killer as an adult. It is just how he deals with that trauma. You can compare it to Psycho, and it's probably the most original and well done as far as that aspect goes, with how and why it's similar to Psycho. So go check this out. Absolutely. And if you want to splurge, get the Severin Blu-ray, or if this version is on DVD, just get the Severin release. So spoilers. So like the the circus elephant dies in front of him. It is a sad scene. Elephant with the bloody nose dies in front of him. There's this big public funeral with this army tank shaped casket for the elephant. It's on a flatbed going through the town. And I'm thinking, are they going to bury it? Is it going to be a funeral pyre? No, they just go to this cliff, dump it, and it just lands in this dump site. And all of these natives come out, wreck the casket, and just start throwing elephant chunks to everyone else to eat. Granted, you don't see it. They just reach in the casket, pull out like bloody chunks or a trunk, throw it to everyone. The kid sees it. His dad gives him a tattoo of a phoenix on his chest with just a knife. The younger Jodorowsky, Aiden, was a very good child actor. He was very convincing through the earlier part of the story. He was tied to a chair, has a thing to bite down on. Dad's just carving into him with a knife. His dad's having an affair with the tattooed woman who's part of his knife-throwing act. His mother witnesses it a few times. The second time, well, one, he's also a hypnotist. So when she catches him, he hypnotizes her. So then he rapes her. Phoenix witnesses that. The second time, she flees the circus, takes sulfuric acid, throws it on his genitals, which he then, in retaliation, grabs his knife, cuts her arms off, which is, she's part of this cult where their goddess was this girl who got raped, then lost her arms. That's sort of their figure, and their church gets torn down. That's kind of the first event in the elephant tattoo. His dad raping his mom, then his dad getting his genitals melted, his mom getting her arms cut off, which the way that's shot, it's overhead, so you just see like blood sprayed out the sides. Everything is so stylish. Every big moment like that is so stylishly shot, looks excellent. Then his dad just wanders out into the street naked, slits his own throat. He witnesses that as well. And then he sees this young girl, this young, mute, deaf and mute mime, I guess, is the daughter of the tattooed lady. He sees the tattooed lady throw her in a van. They drive off, never to be seen again. So all of those culminate into who he is as an adult. Which then there is the sequence where he gets to go out with some of the other patients who, I don't know if they're all meant to have Down syndrome or if they're just actors with Down syndrome and that's what they used for the mental patients. I'm not sure about that. But they meet up with this pimp who gives them all coke, gets them a prostitute. The next day, he sees his armless mother outside. He escapes the hospital and starts this new show where he stands behind her and is her arms, basically. And that's really the second half, and that's when all the surreal stuff really starts happening. But also there's these wonderful shots, like when his dad is with the tattoo lady, like that's him, and she's on her back, those are her legs sticking up. Or when as he watches the girl Alma being driven away, just her up against the glass of the van with the street light shining on it as it drives away. Again, just so many shots that the cinematography and just the style of how it's shot is definitely, I will say it's the highest point of the film, but that's saying a lot because it is well acted, very well written, and the score just suits it perfectly. As I was going to say earlier, it's not because when I mentioned Sergio Leone, um, it does kind of have this depressing tone, covering different timelines as Once Upon a Time in America, which to me is probably the most depressing film that I've ever seen, or one of. And it does have this very somber piece of music that comes up at several points that does remind me of several pieces of music from Once Upon a Time in America. So it's not quite as heavy as that, but there are times where the tone is very similar. So not only is he doing this show with his mother where he's now her arms, but that's how they're living their life now. Like he's constantly behind her, always being her arms. Like even when he just rests his head on her shoulders, he like taps himself or lifts his chin. It's acted so well that it really does look like she is using her own arms, but you know it it's him. And even the way he touches himself, it's as if how she would do it. I know that sounds weird to say out loud, and that is one of the more surreal elements of the film, but it's very convincing. And it is kind of like a what kind of element, but it's very easy to get sucked into. Also, at this time, uh, I guess out of jealousy or whatever, seemingly these women become like a threat. And she's able to control his arms to kill these women. Like the first one is someone he wants to do a knife throwing act with, so they practice under hypnosis. He's dressed like his father, and she's standing there yelling. When she yells at him, it says like "use my arms." It's like this, like he's going into convulsions, and this is kind of when he looks like a young Johnny Depp. I could see him doing a role like this in like the 90s. Probably quirkier, maybe more like a dramedy, but so he kills this one woman. The first kill we see is very Argento because it's the tattooed lady. We see her trying to prostitute Alma out to these men. And when she's killed, the tattoo lady, it is very bloody. And all we see are hands with red painted nails. So, kind of like a giallo, we just see the hands with the knife, but blood goes everywhere. We get shots of like the wall with blood spurting on it. And just the lights, like there's a lot of reds and pinks and greens. The way it's lit, it's very much an Argento kill scene, and I thought it was very effective. Then there's like this giant female wrestler that I think was played by a man that even has like prosthetic tits for like a nude scene. But, he's to do a magic show for her, but Mother pops up, orders him to kill her. He does. And by this point, he's already having a lot of hallucinations. Like, when he finds out about the gigantic wrestling woman, he hallucinates an anaconda coming out of his pants. I don't know if that's supposed to be phallic. That's what I took from it. There's a part when him and his mother are practicing this piece on the piano, and he sees himself as Jesus with all these chickens falling on him. Every time he kills a woman and buries her, he paints her white, then buries her. He has a hallucination of all these other painted white women rising out of the ground and slowly coming towards him, which had a very effective gothic look to it, like a foggy kind of, makeshift cemetery with just like these ghoulishly painted white women just slowly coming out of the ground. This wide shot. Again, just the way this movie shot is so beautiful. And that's where the psycho element comes in because, yes, he is controlled by his mother. Kill any woman that comes close to them. There is the twist, yes, where Alma, makes her way to him, and it's at this point where kind of his psyche is broken, and Mother is trying to control him to kill Alma, but that's when he fights back, and when he finally refuses, well, because he stabs, because he's standing behind her, stabs her, but then we just see her laughing. She says, "I'm a part of you," and then she Jedi disappears. So she was dead the whole time. But the way that's kind of introduced, I thought was very smart, because it looks like they live in this lavish, big house. But when Alma goes to find him, it's the same house, but it's completely dilapidated, unkempt, messy. So that has also just been a hallucination. His living quarters. It even shows Alma walking through the house, and it shows her lifting up a blanket that looks like someone's laying in. She puts the blanket down. We're like, isn't that where the mother's supposed to be sleeping? So there's these big hints, but right before the reveal. So seeing that the house is actually kind of derelict looking, I started thinking, is Mother even real? I was like, well, if she's not, then how was there the show that he was doing and all of that? No. She did die when she lost her arms. Everything involving her was a hallucination. It even shows that when they were doing the piano, they weren't at a piano. He just had this dummy in front of him, and he was, still doing the arms. And eventually, it ends with the cops showing up. Him and Alma, which I love the look of her costume as well. She tries to recreate herself as she was as a child with the white face paint, the headdress and costume. And she just walks him outside, and then it freeze frames with police saying, "Put your hands up," and him being so happy, and he just keeps repeating it, "My hands, my hands," and just freeze, kind of pull up towards the sky, freeze frame, it's finally my hands. I have control over my hands. Freeze frame. Also the great moment where she takes his hand and takes the fingernails off. So it does have that psycho element where Mother is controlling him, but she's dead, and hallucinating, but also talking for her and to her. In this case, it's just with the dummy. But the idea of her living through his arms in the way that's kind of visualized and manifested in his mind is that she's armless, so he has to be her arms. I thought that was a really cool idea, angle, and a way to go about. I don't even know if Psycho was an inspiration for this, but that whole thing we've seen done a bunch of times. I mean, even a Maniac is very much like Psycho. So, very different, surreal way to tackle that aspect. There are, as the movie goes on, the hallucinations do get more heavy. I mean, even after his mom sort of disappears into thin air, like, he realizes she's dead and not real, she disappears. As he comes to the realization of everything, he's kind of picked up and carried by the circus clowns from his childhood. Like, they just kind of show up and they guide him to the next clue, like the dummy in the bed, kind of as like emotional support, because it shows they were the ones that helped him when he saw the dead bodies of his parents as a kid. And then finally, when he's fully composed, all the clowns disappear. He does have a dwarf friend / assistant throughout his life who dresses as and is named Aladdin. even he gives him a hug goodbye, then walks back, waves, and then he disappears. That I didn't see coming. I thought maybe he would have been real, but no, he wasn't. So just the emotions of watching this film, like it is fairly depressing. It is a downer of a movie, but when it has that whole sort of Return of the Jedi type ending, where all the people in his life are waving goodbye, then disappearing both physically and from his psyche. It was kind of like a happy sad, kind of like a beautiful ending. And uh, kind of stumbling over my words because I just got done watching this. I didn't really think about my thoughts at all. Everything about this movie is beautifully made. I absolutely loved it. Certainly of Italian and Spanish co-productions, this is probably the best one. Uh, yeah, definitely a great art house, surreal, uh, avant-garde type horror film. Again, it doesn't feel like 1989. It feels like the early 70s, but you can definitely see the Argento. Obviously, even though I haven't seen other films from this director, I've heard of El Topo. I need to see it, but obviously you have his uh, his directing style. You got Argento. It does have the Sergio Leone type look and feel to it as well. I even looked up to see if Robert Leone was related to him because I was thinking Sergio Leone, but it's spelled different. Great cast. Again, the music is perfect. And it's not that there's shocking events that happen, but the way they happen, like everything that happens in front of this kid, it has the impact to make it as shocking as a movie that tries to be shocking. That's why I find stuff like Sallow to be more shocking than like a Serbian film. And yeah, I was wildly impressed by this movie. I absolutely loved it. I'm trying to make my reviews shorter than 20 to 30 minutes, but I know people are going to say, you're just trying to get the ads. Fucking no. I just keep rambling. There's a lot I want to say, especially when it's a good movie. There's so much I want to, give credit to and make note of. But yeah, been wanting to see this for a while, a couple years at least. Glad I finally just decided to pick it up. Glad to finally own it, and very glad to have finally seen it. Absolutely loved it. Beautiful film. Every aspect is beautiful. You can definitely see all the different aspects and inspirations and what each talent brought to the table. And the story was very well done. I was very engrossed by the story. So yeah, that is Alejandro Jodorowsky's 1989 wonderful art house horror film, Santa Sangre. Well, I cannot talk tonight. But anyway, I thank you for watching.